The shrill beep of my phone cut through the quiet morning like a warning siren. I blinked at the screen, heart dropping. My son, Tommy, had taken a nasty fall while practicing on his bike. I didn't even have time to think before my hands were trembling, dialing 911 with one hand while grabbing the car keys with the other. He's bleeding. Yes, it's bad. Please hurry, I pleaded, my voice cracking in a way that made me hate that I sounded so helpless. The sun was just cresting over the tree-lined streets of our neighborhood, casting long shadows over perfectly manicured lawns. The HOA always bragged about the peaceful, safe community, but right now, peace felt like a cruel joke. I fumbled with the car door sliding behind the wheel, the sound of the engine igniting suddenly deafening in the morning stillness. Tommy groaned from the back seat, clutching his knee, his eyes wide and scared. My chest tightened. Every second counted as I turned onto the main street. I froze. There, across the road, was Mrs. Whitaker, our neighborhood's self-appointed rule enforcer, the queen of HOA theatrics, kneeling near something metallic and sinister. My stomach sank. Bright orange spikes, jagged and cruel, were scattered across the pavement like a trap, waiting for tires. I tried to swerve, but there was no time. "Tommy, hold on," I shouted, heart hammering in panic. My hands gripped the wheel so tight it left white imprints on my knuckles. I could already imagine the letters in the HOA newsletter the next week. Local resident reckless, neighborhood safety violated. Only it wasn't reckless if I didn't hit them right. Mrs. Whitaker straightened, brushing dirt off her immaculate skirt, looking at me with that patented combination of smugness and self-righteous fury. "You can't just drive through here like you own the street," she called, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I barely had time to respond. My son, he's the words caught in my throat. Her expression didn't waver. The spikes glinted in the sunlight like weapons, mocking me. Panic clawed at my chest as I weighed my options. My phone rang again. It was the dispatcher, urging me to keep moving. My eyes darted between Tommy's pale face and the sharp metal. There was no time for hesitation. Not now, not ever. I pressed the gas, tires squealing, heart hammering like a drum in a war zone. The spikes shredded the rubber of my front tires with a scream that sounded eerily like a battle cry. I gritted my teeth, trying not to imagine the worst. Tommy whimpered behind me, and I forced my mind away from the disaster that might be waiting down the road. And then, the sound of sirens growing louder and louder cut through the morning air. A distant salvation, or maybe something worse. The street ahead seemed endless. My heart caught somewhere between terror and disbelief. One thought consumed me. This neighborhood had officially lost its mind. The wail of the ambulance siren hit my ears before I could even see it. Relief mixed with panic. Relief because help was on the way. Panic because my tires were shredded, leaving me wobbling down the street like a shopping cart with a busted wheel. Tommy's small body bounced slightly against the seatbelt. "Mom, it hurts," he whimpered, and I forced a shaky smile, even though my own stomach was in knots. I swung the car into the nearest driveway, trying not to imagine the sheer chaos that would erupt if Mrs. Whitaker showed up to witness this. She loved drama the way most people love coffee. Of course, she was already halfway across the street, phone in hand, likely calling someone to report my reckless driving. "Mom, I can't. It really hurts." Tommy's voice cracked, sharp and urgent. I could see the bruise forming quickly around his knee. "I know, baby. I know. Help is almost here. Just a little longer." My own voice sounded foreign to me, panicked, thin, shaking. The ambulance pulled up behind me, lights blinding, siren piercing. EMTs jumped out and I threw open the passenger door before they even reached the car. One of them, a tall woman with her hair in a tight braid, knelt beside Tommy immediately. "What happened?" she asked, calm but brisk, eyes scanning the wound. Before I could answer, a horrific, metallic crunch echoed behind me. My eyes widened. The ambulance had hit the tire spikes. I froze, jaw slack. The tires hissed, rubber shredding under the relentless spikes, sparks flying against the asphalt like some twisted 4th of July display. "Whoa, whoa, whoa, watch it," one EMT shouted, leaping back. The ambulance skidded slightly, and the back doors jerked open. My stomach sank. This was supposed to be help, not another disaster. I could see Mrs. Whitaker on the porch across the street, a triumphant smirk spreading across her face like a villain in a bad movie. "She did it on purpose," I shouted, my voice rising despite the chaos. "She put spikes. She knew someone could get hurt." Mrs. Whitaker's eyes narrowed, but she didn't respond. She was enjoying this far too much. "Neighborhood safety," she muttered under her breath, like a mantra. Like she hadn't just turned my morning into a scene from a disaster film. The EMTs moved quickly, despite the unexpected obstacle, securing Tommy on a stretcher. I held his hand, squeezing it tight, ignoring the burning in my own fingers. "You're okay. You're okay," I whispered, though neither of us truly felt okay. As they lifted him into the ambulance, I caught a glimpse of the driveway behind me, littered with shredded rubber and the glint of those damn orange spikes. My paws spiked with anger and fear. This wasn't just petty HOA drama anymore. Someone could have died, and then I realized I couldn't follow them. My car was completely ruined, tires shredded beyond any immediate repair. I stood there helpless while the ambulance doors slammed shut. Tommy's eyes met mine through the window. Fear, pain, a silent plea. I gritted my teeth, fists clenched at my sides. This neighborhood, this woman. I was not letting this go quietly. And then I heard the soft, mocking sound of her heels clicking against the sidewalk as she started walking toward me. Hands on hips, like she owned the world. Mrs. Whitaker's heels clicked closer, each step echoing like a drumbeat of doom against my frayed nerves. I wanted to yell, to scream, to shake her until she understood what she'd done. But my voice stuck somewhere between rage and disbelief. You could have killed someone." I finally managed, my words sharp enough to cut through the morning haze. She stopped just a few feet away, hands on her hips, chin tilted like she was judging a piece of art. "I merely wanted to protect the community," she said, voice dripping with that peculiar mix of condescension and self-righteousness that made my blood boil. "You should have obeyed the traffic rules. Those spikes are there for everyone's safety." I felt like my brain had stalled. Safety. "My son's in an ambulance because of your idea of safety," I shouted, the words cracking like glass in the quiet suburban air. Neighbors had begun to peek out from their windows, some holding coffee mugs, others clutching their phones like spectators at a slow-motion car crash. She raised an eyebrow. "Well, Accidents happen when people are careless. I stepped closer, heat rising in my chest. Careless. My car, my son, wasn't careless. You deliberately put spikes in the street. That's illegal. That's insane. For a moment, she blinked, like my words had somehow pierced the armor of entitlement she wore so well. But then, as if recovering from a brief lapse of civility, she smirked. Perhaps you're exaggerating. Or perhaps the community just isn't ready for such dramatic reactions. Dramatic reactions. My tires were shredded. My son was hurt. And I had never been more aware of the thin veneer of civility in this neighborhood. My fists were clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. You're not leaving this unreported, I said, voice low but steady, trying to gather control over the tremor in my chest. I'm calling the police. This is beyond HOA rules. This is criminal. She laughed softly, a sound like nails scratching a chalkboard. Oh, please, let's not be melodramatic. The HOA will sort it out. You'll see. She turned slowly as if to leave, then paused and looked back over her shoulder. Next time, drive more carefully, or don't drive at all. I wanted to throw something, shout something, anything, but before I could, I realized my phone was dead, and my car, my only way to follow the ambulance to the hospital, was destroyed. Panic mixed with helpless rage. I could barely breathe, my hands trembling at my sides. The quiet returned, punctuated only by the distant siren of the ambulance fading down the street. The neighbors had vanished, leaving me alone with shredded rubber, lingering anger, and a terrifying realization. Mrs. Whitaker had weaponized our streets. And if she could do this once, what else could she do? I sank onto the curb, head in my hands, and let out a long, shaky breath. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only fear and an aching helplessness. And yet a stubborn spark of determination flared inside me. I couldn't let this end here, because some lines once crossed demanded a reckoning, and I intended to see it through. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and urgency, a stark contrast to the quiet terror of our neighborhood streets. Tommy lay on a gurney, his small hand clutching mine, eyes wide but relieved as nurses worked swiftly around him. The wound on his knee was worse than I'd feared, but the doctors promised it wasn't life-threatening. Still, as I watched them clean and bandage him, I felt my chest tighten, not from fear, but from fury. After ensuring Tommy was stable, I stormed out into the parking lot, phone clutched in my hand, fingers trembling with a mix of adrenaline and indignation. Mrs. Whitaker's smug grin had burned itself into my mind all morning. I wasn't about to let her manipulate the narrative. Not this time. I called the police first. My voice was sharp, professional, yet quivering underneath with pent-up frustration. Yes, I need to report an illegal hazard. Spikes in the street. It caused an emergency response. My son's life was at risk. I rattled off every detail, every shred of evidence I could recall. The dispatcher assured me officers were on their way, but I could practically feel Mrs. Whitaker's glare from 1,000 MOA. Hours later, back in the neighborhood, police cars and an emergency tow truck surrounded the street. Officers carefully removed the jagged orange spikes, documenting them as evidence. Mrs. Whitaker appeared at her front door, arms crossed, expressing a mix of indignation and disbelief, clearly expecting applause for enforcing community safety. One of the officers approached her, voice calm but firm. "Ma'am, this is considered a public hazard. You're under investigation for placing tire spikes in a residential area. This is a serious offense." Her face palled slightly, a crack forming in her usual veneer of control. I was just keeping people safe," she stammered, but it sounded hollow even to her own ears. I stood a few feet away, watching her sputter, and felt a complicated mix of satisfaction and lingering anxiety. Justice wasn't instant. No one truly fixes the trauma of watching your child in danger. But for the first time all day, I felt a glimmer of control, a reclaiming of the narrative she'd tried to twist. Tommy's small voice pulled me back. "Mom, are we okay now?" I knelt beside him, brushing his hair back and forcing a smile. "Yes, baby, we're okay now. You were so brave." He smiled weakly, and I held him close, inhaling the sterile hospital air that now felt a little less suffocating. Back at the neighborhood, whispers of the day's chaos spread quickly. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, some shaking their heads, others clearly stunned that the HOA's enforcer had crossed a line too far. I didn't need to say a word. Her defeat was visible, undeniable. That night, I lay in bed beside Tommy, listening to the slow rhythm of his breathing. The adrenaline had faded, leaving exhaustion and a residual pulse of anger. But beneath it all, I felt a quiet victory. A lesson had been delivered. Entitlement has limits, and reckless control has consequences. And while Mrs. Whitaker would likely try to reclaim her throne of neighborhood tyranny, I knew this. The day she weaponized tire spikes would be remembered not as a warning, but as proof that even in the most picture-perfect communities, chaos could erupt, and that sometimes standing up mattered more than playing it safe. I closed my eyes, hearts still pounding, but finally a little lighter. The nightmare of orange spikes and sirens had ended. But the story that at least was one I'd never forget. If you found this story as shocking as I did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the wildest HOA dramas and true Karen stories. Drop a comment below and tell me what you would have done if you were in my shoes. And don't forget to give this video a like to help more people hear this unbelievable story.